Untold Crime and Penalties is now out on Netflix. AJ Galante with us. So, AJ, in order to tell this story, because it is fascinating, it's crazy, it's insane. I just want to go back to the beginning, like back to your childhood. If you don't mind, explain who your dad was and exactly what it was like growing up as his son.
Well, I just knew him as dad, you know what I
Right.
mean? And I still think of him as just dad. I mean, he owned a very, very large waste disposal business here in Connecticut, parts of New York, etc. But yeah, I mean, just a hardworking guy, very, strong character. And it was great, still great. And I'm very lucky to have him.
Untold Crime and Penalties is out now on Netflix. The story is about AJ Galante, whose dad bought him a hockey team at the age of 17. He was the president of a hockey team at the age of 17, and we'll get to that in just a second. AJ, in doing research for this, am I reading this correctly? You're a huge wrestling fan?
Oh yeah, I mean, that was my first love. I mean, I remember going to my first wrestling event. I want to say 1994, 95 at the Garden in New York, and I was hooked. I mean, at that point, I figured that was my destiny. Being steel cage matches and stuff like that. I mean, that was everything to me.
And am I reading correctly where I am looking at a birthday party where you had The Rock attend your birthday? Like, how did that come to be? How did The Rock attend your birthday party?
Well, I don't know if we would have gotten The Rock. I mean, at the time he was Rocky Maivia. I believe it was 97. I mean, him and Triple H. Triple H wasn't even Triple H yet. He was Hunter Hearst Helmsley, and he had China. And they weren't main eventers yet. So I think that's how I think we got a little lucky there. But basically my father was friends with an old time wrestler, Captain Lou Albano.
Mhm.
And I guess the day of my birthday party, the WWF had a event in New Haven later that night. So he was able to arrange with Captain Lou to bring some of these guys and girl to the birthday party.
How did he go about arranging that? Like, that had to be pricey. Like, AJ, I love the Grateful Dead. They've never showed up at my party to play to play at my birthday. Like, how was this arranged? How did he make this happen?
You know, it's funny. People have been so stuck on my birthday party the past, ever since this documentary dropped. I've never asked my father, and that's the truth. I've never asked how this happened, but I'm just happy it did.
Did you find out, like, as you're growing up, like a lot of things would happen and you just wouldn't ask dad about it? They just happened?
Well, listen, we were raised, a lot of people where I'm from are raised, you just don't ask too many questions and, good, bad, or indifferent, you just go with the flow sometimes. But, like I said, that's just how it was.
So, how do we arrive? Explain to everyone here how we arrive where you're at the age of 17. Your dad, I think you had a hockey injury and maybe a wrestling injury as well. So, your dad, you couldn't play hockey anymore. So, what he did was bought you a hockey team and made you the president of the hockey team. How did we arrive in that spot?
Oh man, listen. So, I like I said, I played hockey throughout my life, and my senior year of high school, I ended up hurting, damaging my knee very badly, very early on to my senior year. So I couldn't play the rest of the year. To be honest, it would have been a long shot if I could play college hockey. I mean, I wasn't. I was okay. I wasn't great. You know what I mean? So I was more of a role player, and I tell the story all the time, and sometimes I think people think it's an exaggeration, because it's such a nonchalant thing, but it's really true. It was just a Sunday evening. We were sitting there having dinner. I believe it was in March of '04. And I just remember my dad, very nonchalantly looking at me saying, "Hey, listen, I'm going to start a minor league hockey team here in Danbury. And would you like to be the president of the team?" Now, my dad's a very serious guy. So, I take everything he does and say seriously. But even for me, that seemed like I thought he was playing around a little bit. And I thought he was just playing with me. So I was kind of playing with him back. I'm like, "Yeah, sure, dad, I'll do that. No problem." And he just kind of nodded and we went about eating. And here we are.
AJ, one of the underrated things about the movie is that as a 17-year-old, you put together a good team that was competing for the championship. Now, I mean, we find out later on that maybe there were some things, cash, bags full of cash, and that's how you were getting some of these better players. And maybe you went a little bit over the salary cap by like tripling it. But, how early on did you know, hey, you know what? To make a splash, we need to get a Gretzky. And then you sign Wayne Gretzky's brother.
The great one.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's funny. I remember when it came out that, we had the team and this and that. Again, we're here in the Northeast. I mean, we're an hour north of, New York City. And to be honest with you, at the time, Danbury wasn't like a hockey hotbed. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't like people were like, we didn't sell out season tickets the minute, we announced this team. So, we knew kind of early on we needed to make, we needed to make a splash. And, we saw that we saw that Brent was available as a free agent. And, we kind of put it out there that we signed Gretzky. And people were just like, what the hell is going on? And and that's all we kind of put out there. We signed Gretzky. People were just, and I think honestly, that's the only reason why we got the amount of media we did at our April Fool's press conference when we announced the team formally. And when we kind of mentioned, we're our first player is Brent Gretzky. It was almost like a cartoon. It was like everything went silent. And it was just wild, man.
Was he any good at hockey?
Well, that's the thing is I feel bad whenever this gets brought up because honestly, I got to tell you, I got a lot of respect for Brent because, look, if I'm Michael Jordan's brother, I'm definitely not playing basketball. You know what I'm saying? And, I had a lot of respect for him. I'll tell you, look, he's not his brother, but I think he realized he wasn't his brother and he carved out his own niche. He had a very good career. At that level, he was one of the top, point getters every single season. So he could play. And, I feel bad because I don't want him to seem like he was just like a novelty item. Look, don't get me wrong. We definitely wanted the media splash, but he could play. And he was,
splash.
He was a big part of that first season.
You never called him by his first name. I mean, why would he think that?
Well, yeah, no, I know. I see where you went there with it. Yeah.
I've always thought that about because Michael Jordan's son played, I think, at UCF, right? And LeBron's kids are playing, but there's no way LeBron's kids are going to be as good as LeBron. So why do they go and play basketball? Because they're just going to ultimately probably disappoint, right?
Well, I think it's the same reason why, I don't know, maybe in a very smaller scale, it's probably the same reason why I've always, kind of stood with my father and kind of followed a lot of things he was doing or be a part of things he's wanted, me to be a part of. I mean, maybe it's a connection thing. Maybe it's a personal challenge. Look, I know for a fact I've lived in a shadow for a long time. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, my father has done, just amazing things, not on a worldwide scale, but where we're from, I mean, he's done amazing things coming from nothing. And, when you grow up like that, it's very easily, they use that analogy, a kid like me, you kind of get, born and put on third base and people think you hit a triple. So sometimes you have to prove to people extra hard that, hey, listen, yes, I was very fortunate in life, but I can do some things too. So maybe that's a personal challenge for, a kid like LeBron's son.
Untold: Crime and Penalties is available now on Netflix. AJ, one of the best characters in the movie was T-Bone, the equipment manager, who I think was one of your coaches as a kid, and he would check kids into the boards because he was trying to teach them toughness or whatever. He got suspended from the UHL for things that he was pulling with the other team's equipment. What was he doing besides stealing the opposing goalie's equipment, giving them horrible towels, and shutting off the hot water?
Well, listen, I guess I wasn't there for some of it, so I guess it's all an alleged thing. I was always in the office and stuff, but from what I've heard, there's been things that, we've heard complaints such as, goalies' equipment goes missing. There was also talks of seeing an anonymous stick boy put Visine in, the water coolers, things of those nature. Look, Tommy is a nut job, and I love him. He's a dear friend. He's always been that way. Like you said, I remember being in 6th grade and he's just dummying kids into the boards. And I was just like, this guy is insane. And he's a character, but he fit right in. We were all characters. Back then it was a different time. I mean, we used to sit there and we would sit there, me, him, my dad, we'd be eating McDonald's or something in the office, and we'd be thinking of what can we do to piss off the commissioner this week, because we were going to get in trouble anyway. So, it was almost like we're going to get the call anyway. So let's just get our money's worth this weekend.
I was just going to ask you that because it seemed like that was your guys' favorite thing to do. Aside from like the attention, it was, let's see how we can piss off the commissioner this week. And he seemed to always be upset with you. So was there anything that you guys thought about doing that you're like, this is definitely going to do it, maybe we shouldn't do it? Because it seemed like you guys didn't stop at anything. Was there anything that you came up with that you thought, you know what, that's too far, let's not do that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's one of those things where, like anything in life, when you do something, you always seem to, the next thing you want to top it. You want to top it. You want to top it. The problem is we were doing things that when we were thinking about ways to top it, like you said, it was insane. I mean, let me put it to you this way. If we had a 3rd season, which unfortunately we didn't, and maybe fortunately we didn't, it could have really gotten bad. I mean, just
your dad punched a ref in the face and got arrested. How much worse could we have gotten?
And then you promised the commissioner you'd never do anything again.
Allegedly.
The video is very grainy, but I don't personally know of that.
Wait, the equipment manager, Tommy, is who ordered the code red, AJ? I mean, is Tommy doing it on his own? Like, who ordered the code red there?
Listen, I don't want to throw Tommy under the bus. It was we had a very large team. It was a very, there was some joint efforts, and sometimes guys go rogue too. I got to be honest with you. So I don't know. Listen, it's been 17 years. My memory's starting to go a little bit now, but it's it was a lot of fun.
That's convenient. Why was Brad Wingfield, Roy? You're gonna love this guy. Why was Brad Wingfield such an important signing for you?
Oh man, I mean, listen, he at that level of minor league. I mean, he still is. He's just a minor league hockey legend. I mean, back in those days, hockey was a very physical sport. I don't know if it's that anymore, but back then that was the part of the culture of hockey. And he's one of those guys, almost like, you hear people talk about Mike Tyson in his prime and guys being beat before he even entered the ring. That was Brad Wingfield. Brad Wingfield, when you suited up and you saw him during warmups across from you, it was going to be a rough night. And he was just a guy that fit what we were looking to do. And the intimidation factor along with him before he even stepped on the ice was just tremendous.
Did your dad call Brad Wingfield? Did he call down to the box there and ask him to fight before the first?
Well, that's not allegedly.
I know your memory's fading. Okay, I understand that. Okay, but he did make the call and he told Wingfield to fight everyone before you dropped the puck.
That definitely wasn't alleged. Well, see, the story's a little skewed. It wasn't really necessary. Back in those days, I don't know if you remember, there was Nextels. So it was kind of like a walkie-talkie thing. And, we couldn't waste time to the, connection, and the phone would ring. So sometimes it'd be that chirp, that bleep, bleep, you send word through sometimes. And then when we got in trouble about doing that, we had like, hand gestures and things like that. So it was a lot of fun. We always try to find a way around it some way.
But you wanted your team to play a certain way and make a splash and stand out. And the reason Wingfield was so important was because he had 576 penalty minutes the year before. It's a record.
Listen, people could say what they want, but minor league hockey, we knew, listen, it had to be entertaining for people. Where we're from in Danbury, it's a blue collar town. People aren't gonna, kick the doors down to watch, guys, don't get me wrong. That was a dirty little secret, is we had a very solid team that can play, but we got the eyeballs on the ice just due to just the type of tough guys we had. And at that time, like I said, it was a different time. I mean, people wanted to see that. And it was like, the minute the puck dropped that first game, it was almost like a fever pitch here, and it just took off.
AJ Galante with us. Untold Crime and Penalties is out now on Netflix. Excuse me. Give us your best Wingfield story. The best Wingfield being Wingfield story, AJ.
Oh, well,
Did you
I'll tell you
understand
a
my
story
question?
that, yeah, yeah. I would say the best Wingfield story for me on a personal level was when he was rehabbing his leg, going into the second season. I mean, he stayed in Danbury. During the offseason, guys go back home and stuff, but he stayed with us. He stayed in my house, and he was rehabbing here locally. And he was like the crazy big brother I never had. So what we would used to do is every night we would play on PlayStation. We play NHL, whatever the year the video game was. And we would play for hours and hours. And we bonded. I know it's probably not the story people want to hear, but we bonded so much, me and him, that, to a point where we're family. And he was in this big brace. He couldn't really move without help at the time. And I would just be chirping him and beating him in video games and just egging him on. And he'd be pissed because he couldn't get up and pound me, really. He'd be throwing stuff at me. It was an amazing time. But as far as on the ice, I mean, oh my God. I mean, he would just the fight would never stop with him. I mean, he'd get into these modes sometimes where, the refs get in at some point, and he'd always find a way to take a guy down, very like MMA-ish. And he would get a guy down. Usually that's when the refs step in, a guy stop, and man, he would not stop. And refs would be like hanging on him, hanging on his arms, and he'd be swinging. And you got these like 180-pound refs hanging on to him, and he'd be swinging them around like rag dolls. It was wild.
Did he come back just for that fight? Because his career was supposed to be over after the injury, and it seemed like he was coming back just for the fight.
Absolutely. I believe so. I think, again, that injury was so gruesome. And, everybody was like, he'll never, we love Brad, but he'll never come back from this. Never. It's not going to. And you see it all the time, guys that, athletes that just have this will to get back. I watched him rehab that summer, and it hurt me to watch him because he was physically grueling rehab. And when we got in the preseason, the official schedule going into, the 05-06 season, we saw, I believe it was December 3rd, Kalamazoo was coming to Danbury. I mean, it was almost like his rehab doubled. I mean, they were like, Brad, you got to stop. Like, you got to rest a little too. And he had to get back to that. It just, he wasn't going to, one way or the other, he was going to be on the ice. Even if he was in a suit in the box, he would have jumped down if he had to.
Would you guys have signed One-Eyed Willy if he had two eyes?
Of course not. Of course not.
I've never been asked that question, but probably not. But I tell you, David, I mean, I tell people the story. David, the first season, played on a team called the Port Huron Beacons. And I remember, they weren't in our division, so we only saw them twice that first season. And the first time he comes out, he's got this big fishbowl, face mask. And I was asking one of the scratch players on our team who was with me, I was like, who the hell is this guy? And they're like, I was like, why does he have that mask? And they told me the story of what happened to him. So at first I felt bad for him, but then he just started scoring 1 goal, 2 goals, 3 goals. He had a hat trick by the second period, and I was pissed. So I was trying to heckle him, and he kept blowing me kisses. He was winking at me with one eye, and he scored 4 or 5 goals. He's honestly one of the most amazing athletes I personally ever saw. And, it's sad to say, I feel like he never got the opportunity. I don't know, the NHL, maybe they were just a little wary of it, but that guy could have played in the NHL. I mean, he was a sniper beyond sniper. He was unreal.
Untold Crime and Penalties is out now on Netflix. AJ Galante is with us. Before we let you go on the way out here, Drake was wearing a jersey of yours on social media. What's your relationship with him?
Well, what's today? Wednesday? I mean, our relationship started last Wednesday. I mean, I was sitting at home after, this documentary premiered, and one way or the other, we started getting into a direct message conversation, and we eventually spoke on the phone, and I got to tell you, what a humble, great guy. And he was telling me how he had saw the documentary and he really felt something from it. And he really wanted a jersey. He was dropping an album and he was really, really, really trying to get a jersey. And he's like, I need it tomorrow. He's like, I need it tomorrow. And I'm like, damn. I was like, I didn't, I wasn't expecting things to take off. I didn't have an extra jersey. So I gave him basically the one that I had framed, my personal one that was framed in my office at my boxing gym. And I paid someone to, drive up to Buffalo. He sent someone to Buffalo, and I did not expect him to post it on Instagram, but it's been madness ever since.
I want a jersey, AJ.
Consider it done. You get me an address, a number, a name, and I got you guys.
Done. We'll get it to you. We'll get it to you in a minute. Okay.
Absolutely.
We appreciate the time. The story. You seem oddly proud of all of this, and you should be, by the way.
I don't know how to feel about it. I'm just like, I wake up every day now and it's like, it's the weirdest thing because people love talking about it. It brings me a lot of pride because it was something special we tried to do here. I mean, at the time, look, we live in an era today where everyone's trying to get famous so badly. They'll do anything. And I'm not saying I'm famous, but everyone's trying to get their story out there. I mean, me and my dad, we had no intentions on trying to be famous or we just tried to make each other laugh. We tried to make our city laugh and have fun and give us an identity. I would have never expected this in 2021.
Untold, Crime and Penalties, out now on Netflix. AJ Galante, thank you for the time, man. It's a fascinating story.
Thank you, fellas. Get me that address. We'll get those jerseys over.
All right. We'll get it to you right now.
All right, buddy. Thank you.
Thank you.